Today, we're going to explore 7 everyday habits that often lead people to see you differently after 80. These are gentle reflections, not criticisms. They're meant to give you insight, comfort, and maybe a few ideas you can use to strengthen your connections. And as we go through each one, I'll share familiar situations you may recognize from your own life. Moments that happen in living rooms, doctors' offices, grocery stores, in family gatherings all across this country. But before we move on, here's something worth keeping in mind. None of these habits mean you're doing anything wrong. They simply show that everyone communicates differently as they age. And with a little awareness, many of these misunderstandings can melt away. Let's begin with the first one, a habit that shows up more often than people realize. The first habit is speaking in a way that's more serious than you intend. As you get older, your voice naturally changes. Maybe you've noticed it sounding a little firmer, or maybe you catch yourself speaking with a sharper edge when you're trying to make a simple point. This happens to many people after 80. It isn't anger, it isn't frustration. It's just the voice of someone who has lived a long life and learned to speak with certainty. But to younger ears, even a calm remark can sometimes sound stern. Imagine you're sitting at the kitchen table with your granddaughter as she shows you photos on her phone. You lean in a little, squinting because the images are small, and you say, "I can't see what that is." To you, it's just a fact, but she might hear it as annoyance or impatience, and then she might pull the phone back a little, uncertain, thinking she upset you somehow. A moment that could have been lighthearted becomes slightly tense, not because of what you said, but because of how it was understood. These small moments add up, and people begin to think you're irritated when you're simply trying to keep up. If you've ever had someone respond, "Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to upset you," even when you felt perfectly calm, this might be why. The good news is that a tiny shift can make a big difference. When you add a soft smile, a gentle hand gesture, or a light comment like, "These screens are getting smaller every year," people instantly understand you're not upset. You're just navigating the moment. Little adjustments like these help others read your intentions clearly, especially when they already care about you and want to connect. But there's something else worth knowing. Another habit that creates misunderstanding after 80 is speaking in short answers. As people age, they often rely on simpler statements. It's practical, it saves energy. You've learned that you don't need long explanations to make a point. But for younger family members, short answers sometimes feel like closed doors. Take the example of a daughter calling you from her car after work. She asks how your day was, and you reply, "Fine." She asks what you had for lunch, and you say, "Just something simple." To you, these answers are normal. You're not hiding anything. You're not brushing her off. But to her, it feels like you're uninterested in talking. She may think you're tired or don't want to be bothered, so she ends the call early. People today are used to conversations filled with details. They're used to text messages, long discussions, and constant sharing. So when you respond with short, efficient answers, they might assume you're unhappy or withdrawn. And over time, they may stop asking questions altogether. Not because they don't care, but because they think you don't want to talk. If you ever feel conversations ending sooner than you'd like, this might be one of the reasons. You don't need to change your natural style, but adding even a little extra detail can reopen the door. You might say, "It was a quiet morning, but I enjoyed my coffee out on the porch," or "Lunch was simple, but it hit the spot." These tiny additions help others feel welcomed into your world, And when people feel welcomed, they stay longer. Before we move on, there's another detail that often gets overlooked: timing. A very common misunderstanding arises when seniors talk about pain, discomfort, or worries at moments others don't expect. Many people in their 80s experience aches throughout the day. Maybe it's stiffness when getting out of bed, or knee discomfort when climbing into the car. These sensations come and go, and sometimes you mention them without thinking. The challenge is that younger people often interpret these comments as medical emergencies or emotional distress. Picture yourself sitting in the passenger seat while your son drives you to a doctor appointment. As you settle in, you quietly say, "My hip has been bothering me since yesterday." You're simply sharing, but to him, this might sound like a sudden new problem. He may worry, tighten his grip on the steering wheel, or begin asking rapid questions. If this kind of exchange happens often, he may start feeling anxious each time you mention discomfort, even when you don't expect him to react that way. This mismatch leads to misunderstanding. You're expressing a passing feeling. They're hearing a call for immediate action. One gentle way to soften this misunderstanding is to add a small frame around your words, something like, "My hip is acting up today, but it's manageable." Or, "It's been on and off, so no need to worry." This helps others understand what you mean in a calm, realistic way. And of course, always speak with your doctor about new or worsening symptoms. Your health team should be your guide. Everyone's body is different, so sharing concerns with a medical professional helps you get the support you need. Another part of this story often gets overlooked, and it shows up in everyday routines around the home. After 80, it's common to move a little slower, take longer to make decisions, or pause before speaking. This is completely normal, but people around you, especially younger adults, sometimes misread these pauses. They may think you're unsure, confused, upset, or even disagreeing with them, when in reality you're simply taking a moment to gather your thoughts. Imagine you're standing in the cereal aisle at the grocery store, looking at the familiar boxes on the shelf. A friend or relative might ask, "Do you want the usual one?" You pause for a moment because you're deciding whether you want something lighter this week. But to them, that pause feels like hesitation or worry. Some might jump in and speak for you, others might assume you're frustrated with the choices. And before you know it, the simple act of choosing cereal becomes a moment filled with assumptions. These small misunderstandings can spread into larger ones over time. People may think they need to make choices for you. They may rush to finish your sentences, answer questions on your behalf, or intervene when you weren't asking for help at all. This can feel uncomfortable or even disrespectful, even though they're acting out of concern. One gentle way to help is to say, "Just thinking for a moment," or "Give me a second to decide." These short phrases help others understand that your pause is intentional, not a sign of worry or confusion, and you remain in control of your own choices, which is important at every age. But there's another habit that quietly causes misunderstanding, especially inside families. It's the habit of repeating certain stories or memories. After 80, it's natural to revisit familiar moments. These stories are comforting. They're part of your identity. They carry the lessons and emotions of a lifetime. And sometimes you share them again because they're meaningful or because they connect you to happier times. But younger adults may misinterpret this as forgetfulness, boredom, or even intentional repetition. They don't always understand that some stories carry emotional weight, For example, you might mention the first home you ever owned, that small house you bought in 1963. Maybe you talk about the creaky steps leading to the porch or the way the morning light hit the kitchen. You talk about it more often now because those memories feel warm and alive. But a listener who doesn't know the full story might think you're forgetting you already told it. They might respond with a quick, "Yes, I remember," in a way that feels dismissive even though they don't mean it that way. This creates distance without either person realizing it. One helpful approach is simply to add a brief explanation before sharing a familiar memory. Something like, "This story has been on my mind lately," or "I was thinking about this the other day and I wanted to share it again." This small introduction helps listeners understand your intention. It signals that the memory matters to you, not that you forgot you told it. And it encourages them to engage with the story instead of brushing past it. Let's move to another area of misunderstanding, one that affects communication every single day. Many seniors shift into what I call the practical style of talking after 80. You say what needs to be said and you don't dress it up. You might remind someone to lock the door or ask if they've eaten lunch. You might mention that the oven is still warm or that the mail hasn't been brought in. These comments are practical, helpful, and rooted in years of taking care of others. But younger adults often hear these remarks as instructions or criticism. Even something small like, "Don't forget your coat," or "Be careful on the driveway," can be misheard as worry or disapproval. To you, it's just natural caring. To them, it sometimes feels like you don't trust them to manage their own lives. This misunderstanding is very common, especially between seniors and their adult children. It leads some people to respond with irritation, even though you weren't criticizing them at all. You were simply offering the same gentle guidance you've offered your whole life. One simple way to make these moments smoother is to add warmth to the message. You might say, "I know you already know this, but I care about you," or "I'm just being a little protective today." These small additions soften the tone and help younger adults appreciate the intention behind your words instead of misreading them. Before we move on to the final habits, we need to talk about something many seniors never realize affects how others perceive them. The habit of assuming others know what you need or how you feel. After 80, expressing needs can feel tiring. You may be used to handling things quietly or not wanting to bother anyone. So you might keep your feelings to yourself, expecting that close family members should already know when something is bothering you or when you need help. But people of younger generations are used to very direct communication. They're used to texting, "I need help with this," or "Could you call me later?" Because of this, when seniors rely on subtle hints or quiet signals, younger adults often miss them completely. They may think everything is fine when you're actually struggling. And later, when you finally express frustration, they feel blindsided. Picture this situation. Your daughter drops off groceries on a busy afternoon. You had hoped she would stay for a cup of tea, but when she says she has errands to run, you simply nod. She leaves thinking everything is perfectly fine. But later that evening, you feel disappointed and quietly hurt. She, however, has no idea she missed an opportunity to connect. These silent expectations can build misunderstandings on both sides. A simple, gentle phrase like, "I'd love it if you could stay a few minutes," can brighten the moment for both of you. People truly do want to understand you. They just need clear signals to do so. Now let's talk about something that affects nearly every relationship: the habit of focusing on physical challenges in a way others misinterpret. When someone in their 80s mentions feeling tired or slow, they're often speaking with acceptance. You've lived long enough to know your body doesn't move the same way it once did. Saying you feel tired is just a fact, not a complaint. But to younger adults, especially those who love you deeply, this can sound like discouragement or even despair. They may rush in with suggestions, solutions, or unsolicited advice. They might even worry you're losing hope or feeling depressed. This misunderstanding can grow when people hear these comments often. They assume every mention of fatigue is a sign of serious decline, even when it's simply a natural part of aging. One way to ease this is to give context. You might say, "I'm a bit tired today, but I'm okay," or "I'm moving slow, but it's nothing new." These extra words give clarity and prevent unnecessary worry. And always remember, talk with your doctor about persistent symptoms. They can guide you in ways family members cannot. Your health team is there to support you, and everybody ages differently. We now come to the seventh and final habit, one that causes more misunderstanding than almost any other. It's the habit of trying to stay strong by hiding how much you miss people. Many seniors downplay loneliness because they don't want to burden anyone. You might say, "Oh, I'm fine on my own," even when you wish someone would stop by. You might tell others, "No need to fuss over me," when deep down you would love a long conversation or a warm visit. You do this out of love, but younger adults may interpret these words literally. They may think you prefer solitude. They may assume you don't need company or that you enjoy long stretches of quiet. But in reality, many seniors feel most themselves when someone sits with them, even for just a few minutes. This misunderstanding can create distance that neither person wants. A simple change in wording can help bridge that gap. Something like, "I'm okay, but I always enjoy your company," or "Stop by when you have time. I always appreciate seeing you." These soft, welcoming remarks let others know you value connection without making them feel pressured. Human beings of every age need companionship. Wanting it is not a burden. It's part of being alive, and being open about that helps others understand you far better. As we reach the close of this conversation, let's pause for a moment. Aging brings challenges, yes, but it also brings a lifetime of wisdom, strength, and stories that matter deeply. People may misunderstand you at times, not because they don't care, but because communication shifts as we move through different stages of life. Every one of the habits we discussed today is completely natural, and the more you understand them, the easier it becomes to guide others towards seeing the real you. You're not invisible, you're not difficult, you're not forgotten. You're someone who has lived through decades of change, love, loss, and growth. Your voice still matters, your presence still matters. And with small adjustments, tiny ones, you can help the people around you feel closer, more comfortable, and more connected. Before we go, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Which of these ideas felt familiar to you? Have you noticed people misunderstanding you in small ways? Share your experience in the comments. Your stories always help others feel less alone. And if you enjoy warm, thoughtful guidance like this, feel free to subscribe. We're here to support you with new insights every week.